Do you folks remember in high school, there was always that one guy or girl, or even in elementary school, or even college for that matter, if you went? I certainly didn't go, but when they walked into class, they would just pay attention, maybe take some notes, but when it came time for the test or the exam, they didn't study, they knew everything, and they got a very good grade. Now, I'm not trying to disrespect or take away their intelligence. Some of you watching this may in fact be some of those people. Now, the reason why I say that, folks, is because what if I told you that certain people like that are smart, don't get me wrong, but in some cases it is because there are certain ions that have been activated within their brain using a certain energy weapon underground being controlled by both humans and aliens. Now, before I get into all that, I just want to say very quickly that we do have a Patreon. I will be getting to the shout out soon. I've just been busy beyond flooded busy, and I just want to thank all of you so much for your patience. We just had a Patreon members only episode come out last night. There's a lot of things we discuss on there that we cannot discuss here publicly, at least without getting taken down. So let's get into it. Alice's floor, using N.H.E nervous systems to fuel time manipulated drawbacks. So I'm going to break this down very strongly for all you guys. So let's take a look first off at Project Looking Glass, because we have to understand that there is an intrinsic connection between CERN's Alice machine, all right, and Project Looking Glass. So allegedly, within the S4 area, and I'm putting up some of the blueprints that have allegedly leaked right now and some of the schematics and drawings from some disgruntled whistleblowers and contractors who have described this from the military-industrial complex, there is a certain level on the 42nd level, which is why you see level 4 to 2. It's a little bit of a psychological warfare apparatus in the sense of, they put a dash in between, but there's a certain apparatus and a machine that has been evolved from Project Looking Glass that essentially allows for you and human beings to see certain parts of the future that then allows for the government to predict an overarching blueprint or plan. Now, there is one thing that N.H.Es, and by the way, N.H.E stands for non-human entities. Notice how they just keep changing the acronyms for the sake of trying to confuse you and me, the public. N.H.Es have told human beings that there is one law that cannot be broken, whether you try through the esoteric aspect or you try through the technological aspect, which is the law of free will. Now, you're going to see how this connects directly to a lot of different things, including the nervous system, the naga, you name it. So, what is a time-manipulated drawback? So, a drawback protocol is when the reformation of a plan must be adjusted based on what Alice's floor is telling them. Now, there are a handful of disgruntled contractor employees who have spoken about, and I'm putting some of the transcripts up on the screen right now, who have spoken about how there is something called the anthill. The anthill is actually part of the 42nd floor in the deep underground military base within the S4 area that connects to the Subterranean global network, because there's a difference between deep underground military bases and the Subterranean global network. So think about like a cocoon or a beehive, if you will, for the Subterranean global network, and on the 42nd floor, that is where humans have control. But once you get to the 43rd and below, humans do not have a say in anything. So all technological exchanges are done on the 42nd floor, where this Alice machine is also located as well too, because the extraterrestrials want to ensure that human stability is foregone even when an exchange is made underground and not above ground. Now, if we take a look here at some of these diagrams, take a look at this machine right here. It basically explains and shows how the machine operates, how you can get to the machine if you are a contractor or someone with this classified level clearance. But one of the things I want to point out here is this image right here. Notice how it shows that the red dot is the size of a human being. So you could see the size, all right, relative to that of the actual machine itself. But you see how it says argon port right there? What is argon? So if you if you look up argon on CERN's actual website, what you're going to see here is a vast array of different articles from CERN themselves. But here's what's interesting, folks. Look at this. A 350 meter tall power to purify argon. CERN is participating in ARIA, a project to build a 350 meter column to produce extra pure argon to be used in a dark matter search experiment, end quote. Notice how it's extremely vague, but what is argon? So, according to Wikipedia, argon is a chemical element with the symbol Ar and the atomic number 18, alright? But nearly all of the argon in the Earth's atmosphere is radiogenic, divided from the decay of potassium in the Earth's crust. In the universe, argon is by far the most common isotope, as it is the most easily produced by stellar nucleosynthesis in supernovas. Alright? It is the most abundant noble gas in Earth's crust, comprising 0.0015% of the crust, end quote. Keep that in mind, folks. Now, let's take a look at this right here. Home.CERN, this is from February 16th, 2015. CERN accelerators boost argon into action. The reason I bring this up is because if we take a look, and I quote, the accelerator complex is performing a new trick, so I'm sure it is, supplying argon ions to an experimental program for the first time. The argon ions are produced at a special source and made to circulate around 4 accelerators before being sent to a target, end quote. What could that target be? Notice how since 2016 there has not been an update on this. When there's no update, it means they have been successful and they're keeping things quiet. Now, one of the next things I want to point out here is that if we take a look at why nervous systems are fueling this Alice machine, it is because it has to do with something called the Naga. And the Naga essentially establishes in a certain way the principalistic foundation of what the human body and the human soul, if you could say, actually is comprised of. Now, it has many different meanings, but I'm putting up some images now from ancient Egypt, Mesopotamia, things like this, where the argon has actually been drawn, curated, classified, and directed towards a certain summoning of extraterrestrials, it seems, right? Forget the fact that we're talking about, single-headed serpents or what have you. When you look at the human nervous system, it embodies the Naga. Now, the Naga takes over the I guess you could say, the nervous system, because even after the human body dies, the cells within the nervous system can still be rejuvenated and regenerated, which is why so many people being abducted disappear for many different reasons, as Patreon members know. But they take the spines of these aliens, right, because they are more, I guess you could say, on an esoteric and energetic level, ascended in many different ways. They take the spines and they throw them into Alice because it fuels Alice, and it allows for Alice to become more accurately predictable of certain futuristic events. Now, human nervous systems work as well too, don't get me wrong, but it's not the same. We are far more weaker energetically. Now, let's take a look at mysteriousuniverse.org. Back in January 2007, I interviewed a man named Ray Bosch. Ray has an interesting background, blah, 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 blah. Anyways, he messed around with the use of sophisticated holograms rather than anything extraterrestrial. Now, here's what's interesting. Ray had spoken to government insiders. Now, here's the best part. Ray revealed that his insider sources said they were attached to a classified program within the military intelligence government world that was seeking contact with what they termed non-human entities, or N.H.Es for short. Notice already, folks, you see that connection there. When acronyms are used amongst different projects, but they're the same acronyms, it means there's a consistency, and more than likely it means the people and members within those projects are using a fusion cell of sorts to cross-communicate, all right? And if you don't know what a fusion cell is, please check out the episode from a couple months ago. Now, at first, the group suspected that the entities were extraterrestrial. As time went on, however, that theory was replaced by a far more controversial one. The group came to believe that they were dealing with nothing less than demonic entities from a literal hell, but apparently that didn't stop them from trying to contact and interact with them. Reportedly, and as a result of the group trying to work with demons, there were various deaths in the program. Ray told me that his sources personally showed him graphic photos of some of the dead, ill health, and bizarre runs of bad luck. It was as if the entire project was cursed. In fact, that is exactly what some of the members of the group came to believe. End quote. Now, I'm not going to sit here and tell you folks what to believe, but what I will tell you is this: be very vigilant of the word demonic. It could mean negative, it could mean things like that. Now, what I also want to point out too is that in the Patreon members only episode, and as well I think in the public episode too, from a couple days ago, I mentioned that Luis Elizondo, the former head of the Pentagon secret ATIP program, said that his superior told him that some of these beings, if you will, manning some of these UFO craft are in fact demons. But again, what does demon mean? What is the perception of the term demon? We have to understand that. Now, let's take a look at this Alice document, calibration of the Alice transition radiation detector. Now, for those who don't know, Alice is an AI based in Frankfurt, Germany, but it is different from the Alice within S4. This is how they use a double psychological warfare aspect on you, and members know this far more better than most because we break that down in the episodes. But what you'll notice here is that they use the same words to cover up for a double psyop, as a matter of fact, to make sure that you cannot figure out what's really happening. Now, here's the next thing I want to point out too. TopSecretWriters.com. No official above top secret clearance, and when top secret isn't enough. It basically discusses the fact that there comes a point within the classified levels of the government that there are no documents to substantiate certain things, and there are are above top secret, above the Q clearance and all that, there comes a point where it's not even need to know. It's pure shadow government. Can you be trusted? And things like that. Now, I also want to take a look at this right here from Bibliotheca Plates. Again, a great indexing website. Take a look at the percentage of state acreage federally owned and state owned by the government. Look at these states: Nevada, Utah, Alaska, Idaho, Oregon, California, Wyoming, Arizona, Colorado, New Mexico, all places where there's tons of land, and for some reason there's massive amounts of government ownership. Now, Alice's floor also connects to something called the anthill, which connects to the honeycomb that encapsulates inner Earth. But once you hit a certain level, like I mentioned, humans don't run the show anymore. Now, and that's where these exchanges occur, which is why people say, how come when, aliens give technology to humans, we can never catch it on camera? How come we never see aliens coming into a certain base at Area 51? I mean, it shouldn't be hard to catch it, right? Well, first off, if it's above ground, which it usually is not, it is because the craft are invisible, granted. Now, some people have caught some craft coming into Area 51, but that could have been manned by military. Hard to say. With that being said, on the 42nd level, all right, and if you look at the diagram, it mentions 4-2, like I mentioned earlier. On the 42nd level, that is where that is Alice's floor. All right, that is where the machine is. That is where the much more advanced version of Project Looking Glass occurs, and that is where overall exchanges take place, which is why you never see it occur on a front level or anything like that. Now, on a public level on the surface, excuse me. So, have any of you heard of SIGINT? SIGINT stands for Signals Intelligence. Now, according to Wikipedia, is intelligence gathering by interception of signals, whether communications between people or from electronic signals not directly used in communication, end quote. Now, it's basically a handful of satellites that use energy weapons and not just that, but many different things to collect data and information. This is going back to the example I gave at the beginning about that one kid in high school that always ended up coming in, or one guy or girl, or maybe there were a few of them that always knew what to say and write on a test. It's because SIGINT actually interferes with some of the AI that the NSA is controlling with the gray aliens, as we mentioned a few days ago. Now, it also interferes for those whose nagas have been, I guess you could say, enlightened or ascended energetically. It doesn't need to be esoteric. It could be scientific as well, too, because, again, it's all about perception in the way that we understand it from our respective spectrum, ideologically, right? And mentally and even spiritually. Now, what ends up happening here, folks, is that these radio spectrum and communication modes affect some of the ions and isotopes within the energetic and frequential range of your mind. And some people, more than likely, again, notice the connection. Those with Rh null and Rh negative blood types are more than likely the ones that will receive this, which will naturally make them more intelligent. Now, when we take a look at the way in which they're abducting children, which we get into more on Patreon because we can't really talk about this as much publicly, but what we have to notice too is they're abducting children in groups of 10. What's interesting is that the Alice machine and Alice's floor is comprised of 10 different levels. Now, this is when it's going to get really good, folks. Take a look at this right here. So, lately the Davos, the Great Reset, the World Economic Forum, Bill Gates, Klaus Schwab, the WHO, President Macron, Boris Johnson. Look at the pin that they're wearing. It's a new pin, the Great Reset, that has 10 angles to it. All right, the Great Reset pin. They love throwing it in your face by making it symbolic. And why is this the case? I'm not saying Bill Gates personally or Klaus Schwab knows, but they, through the fusion cell of the CIA, which we did an episode on a few months ago, filtered down the appropriate information of the way in which humanity must move. Now, this is where blockchain and cryptocurrencies come in, because when you take blockchain and cryptocurrencies and envision it to a point where you can actually make it the one global currency in correspondence with that, of how you can predict things using Alice's floor and Project Looking Glass in some correspondence with some, I guess you could say, demonic aliens, as we referenced a few minutes ago from the website that we just quoted, you'll notice that this can actually occur as using a form of energetic, I guess you could say, currency. We become the currency, but the energy within our naga, which is our nervous system in a lot of ways, becomes the currency. Now, take a look at this right here. So you see the pin right there, right, folks? Now take a look at this. Digital identity for the Great Reset as backed by CERN, okay? I want to make that very clear. CERN publicly endorsed this. 10 different angles. Notice how there's 10 different angles on Alice. There's 10 different angles on that pin. They love throwing the symbolic aspect right in your face. Because again, let's take a look at some pictures of the Naga. And what's interesting is that throughout Mesopotamia, ancient Egypt, different cultures, we keep seeing the one-headed serpent. However, and I'm not trying to get into this whole, mermaid serpents and all that, but look at the way in which the structure is detailed and embodied. It seems as though it is similar to that of the human nervous system. And notice how these Nagas are always taking over something else, specifically within these Egyptian hieroglyphs. It seems like these Nagas are actually encapsulating human bodies. And folks, I'm not even joking. I know it may sound a little bit ridiculous, but think about it like this. If Alice is being used through an advanced version of Project Looking Glass to look into the future that uses SYNGINT to then project onto certain energetic levels and frequencies to control certain gray aliens using the NSA's artificial intelligence, what would stop them from embodying a certain human or being able to control them using the Naga? A lot of people think when they experience gang stalking, it's all in the mind, but folks, it might also be in the nervous system as well too. We have to understand that, and we have to know that the drawback protocol is when the reformation of a plan must be readjusted using the Naga. So every time a drawback protocol occurs, they basically need more alien spines or human spines. Human spines work too, but they basically need more alien spines and nervous systems. They need the head attached to the whole spine and the nerve cells, and they throw it in to Alice to function it. It's kind of like when you burn a dead body, so to speak. It's the same way. You take the body, you take the spine, the nervous system, the skull, all of it has to be attached, by the way. You zip it up into the bag and you jam it in, you throw it in. And on top of that, folks, we have some of the transcripts to prove this. Again, looking at ocities.org, which will be in the link in the description for those watching on YouTube, you will now see, again, the reference to N.H.E. All right? You will then see, look, some disgruntled contractors not happy, and I quote, a disgruntled contractor reported that he worked on constructing the tunnels in the underground area and was bothered by the Air Force probes that were often seen hovering in the tunnels. He described these probes as small orbs and said that this facility was nicknamed the Ant-Hill because of its resemblance to underground ant colonies. End quote. You want to know why it seemed like that? Because humans didn't build that. Humans were just building the top-down version from the surface below. After that, it attached to the Subterranean global network. All right? And that's why the Subterranean global network is a perfect system that has finally been established in a physical sense for the elites to allow for the Great Reset to occur, because they're using Project Alice and Project Looking Glass and Alice's floor to bank on the fact that their outcome is more than likely to succeed. But if it does not, they will escape into the Subterranean system, not the deep underground military bases, the Subterranean system, even deeper than that, which is why they keep making exchanges with human beings by kidnapping more and more children, which we get into more on Patreon because we can't talk about that publicly, in order to offer up as a sort of way of saying, listen, you give us some of your dead extraterrestrial nervous systems because they know better than even humans what it's needed for Alice's floor, right? And on top of that, we'll give you whatever you want, humans, mutilated cows, they seem to have an interest in, and things like that. So I want all of you folks to let me know what you think, and we'll catch you very soon. Cheers.